Okay, I get to welcome again and introduce Iyun, which is fun. We have the third speaker, Rav Matityahu Kahn, who is the co-director of Tochnit Liba and the new overseas program in Nishmat, together with his wife Shira. Rav Matityahu served as a community rabbi, and the OUJLIC director was Shira at Princeton University over the past 3 years. Prior to that, Rav Matityahu served Princeton. Right? Wow. Prior to that, sorry for saying this all very quickly, Rav Matityahu served as a rabbi in Yeshivat Otniel. I shout out too because I'm from Otniel, as well as Yeshivat Neve Shmuel and at the Beit Midrash Chavruta in Hebrew University, Jerusalem. He received his rabbinic ordination from the chief rabbinate of Israel and completed a Tzohar training program for communal rabbis. Rav Matityahu holds a BA in education, Talmud, and Jewish philosophy from Herzl College, and an MA in research in Jewish philosophy from Ben Gurion University. Okay, so we're excited. Thank you so much.
Shalom, everyone. Very happy to be here. Happy for the opportunity. So first of all, I guess I don't need to introduce myself, but please feel welcome to introduce yourself if you want to share any or ask any question. So just at least so I know who I'm speaking to. And please do, because we never learned together, so I don't know what to assume you know or what's clear or what I'm saying that's not clear enough, so please just feel free. We're going to start, the idea of this shir is really to focus in a few of the most famous halachot, the laws of lighting the Chanukah, lighting the candles of Chanukah. And I want to try and dive deeper into the meaning of these laws. Probably everyone here practiced it, maybe for many, many years, but there's so many levels of meaning in these very simple acts, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things that we have in Judaism that really stands out also, the ability to practice and do something practical, and at the same time it connects us to much deeper levels of meaning. And we have that combination all the time. So that's really the idea here. I personally love learning halacha in that way, and that's why I'm sharing this with you. So I guess since only I have the speaker, I need to use the microphone to read the sources too. What are we more comfortable with, English or Hebrew? English, right? Okay, so I have the Hebrew in the beginning, in most of the sources, and the English following for the main sources. So I want to start with the beginning, right? Shulchan Aruch, in the halachot of Chanukah, starts out with I'm starting out with where we place the Chanukah candles. So you have this in the first source. One should place the Chanukah light at the entrance which adjoins the public domain on the outside. Okay? If the house opens to the public domain, you should place it at its entrance. If there is a courtyard in front of the house, I'm skipping, it should be placed outside the courtyard. And if someone lives, I'm in the third and the fourth line, if they live in the upper floor, having no entrance leading to the public domain, then it should be placed at a window that adjoins a public domain. So basically, we have here a very famous halacha in which we're supposed to place the Chanukah candles outside of the house, right? What would you expect when you see something like that? When we have a law where we basically the most preferred way to do this mitzvah, or the right way to do the mitzvah, is to place the Chanukah outside our house, not inside. What would you expect when you see something like that? Yes, please.
You're also supposed to meditate on the candles and really go deep and unless you put a chair and sit in the cold, you want to have them sort of illuminating your home at the same time. That's
Great. So you're saying really primarily we want it to be outside, but on the other hand, we need to also be able to see it, so we want to tie it back to the inside. So it needs to be outside, but connecting it to the house. Great. So that's one direction. Any other thoughts, maybe? Why do we need it outside? for other people to see. It's not for us to see, right? It's for other people to see. Okay, that's something I want to question in a second. So that's the first halacha we see. I want to ask, if we look a bit, if we skip a bit in this source, we'll see the idea of putting the Chanukah candles in a shul, in a synagogue. By the way, translations here are from Sepharia. I don't take too much responsibility for them. So you can see in the third paragraph here of this first source, it is a mitzvah to place the Chanukah light in the handbreadth of closest to the entrance on the left. And if we skip a bit, sorry for the skipping, we'll go to the fifth line in this paragraph. In the synagogue, one should place the Chanukah light at the southern wall, and in bold, at the end of this section, a person does not fulfill his obligation with the lights of the synagogue and needs to kindle again in his own house. So now I want to ask, if the idea of Chanukah lights, Chanukah candles, is to light it out for other people, wouldn't the best way to do the mitzvah would be to light it in the shul, out in public? Not to say anything against Chabad, right? But maybe Chabad Chanukah candles would be the best way to do it, right? But Chazal purposely did not want us to be lighting the Chanukah candles out in public, not in the square, in the city square, not in Times Square, not in Machne Yehuda, and not in shul. And even more so, if the idea is just to publicize the miracle, I would expect at least that someone who lights it in shul would be fulfilling their obligation. But the halacha says it very clearly, we do not. Even more so, it wasn't so clear you're allowed to even make a bracha on the candles in shul. There's a discussion about it. Some of the halachic authorities really hold that you're not allowed to make a bracha on the Chanukah candles in shul. So that's already, I think, raising a bit of a question mark. What exactly is the purpose of these candles? On the one hand, it needs to be outside. On the other hand, it needs to be connected and linked to a home. Okay, so that's the first step I wanna take here, and I'll direct you in a second to the next source. And I'll ask, what happens if you don't have, I guess you saw this already, what happens if you don't have an entrance to the public domain? What do you do then? What do you do? The answer, you saw it already, right? We read it. What do you do? You light it by the window. Okay, great. Now, I want to ask, what happens if that window is more than 10 tefachim, right? So we see on the second section of the first source, I'll just read it out, one should place the Chanukah light above 3 handbreadths. Sorry, I don't pronounce it that well. And from the ground, it is a mitzvah to place it beneath 10 tefachim. Sorry, I'm switching to the Hebrew. But if it is placed above 10 tefachim, it is still fulfilling the obligation. So again, we have, we'll get back to this soon, but we have another mitzvah that it needs to be between 10 tefachim and 3 tefachim, meaning somewhere in the middle here, like floating in the air, right? Not on the ground, and on the other hand, not too high. That's another mitzvah. So what happens if your window is more than 10 tefachim? Then you have an interesting discussion. What is better? To put it by your entrance, or to put it by your window that's more than 10 tefachim if it doesn't face the public domain. So that's another example of a question that we have a lot today, where most people live in apartment buildings, right? So I'll just send you quickly to source number 6. I didn't bring it in English. They didn't have a translation. I'll just translate it quickly as we're going. If someone lives in a apartment that's higher up, you put it at the window that's facing towards the public domain, even if the window is higher than 10 tfachim. Okay? And if you have two windows, one that's lower than 10 tfachim, one that's higher, so obviously that would be better. Okay, so that's the Mishnah Bura, the Chafetz Chaim in the previous century. That's the halachic guidance that he gave. If we look in when he's trying to analyze this in his Sharatzion, meaning his footnotes, he says actually it's not so clear that it's better to put it by the window. I don't have a good enough proof for it. Now, I would expect everyone here knows, why do we light Chanukah candles? I think the most famous reasoning for it is Pirsumei Nisa, right? So the Mishnah Berurah doesn't say that. It doesn't come up to his mind to say that. And to be honest, if you look in the Gemara, it doesn't say Pirsumei Nisa at all regarding the location of the Chanukah candles. Not even once. Okay, and that's surprising. So the Mishnah Berurah says, listen, the inyan, I'll read it in Hebrew and translate, the inyan shetzarich heker, it's the bolded part in the source number 7, the inyan shetzarich heker livnei reshut harabim yesh makor gadol b'Gemara. There's a great source for making sure that the people in the public domain can recognize the Chanukah candles. What's the great source? He doesn't bring the words Pirsumei Nisa. What did he say? That we know that there's a halachic law. When do you light the Chanukah candles? What timing? When people leave the marketplace, right? Until then, that's when you can light it. So he's saying, if it's till people are walking in the marketplace, obviously it's for them to see, and therefore, lighting your Chanukah candle towards the public domain makes more sense. Okay? It's an interesting proof. If it really was because of Pirsumei Nisa, you should have said because of Pirsumei Nisa, right? And then he brings another proof. Also another reason. Why? Because we need to put it at the entrance of the house facing outwards. Okay, so you can see that the reasoning of Pirsumei Nisa isn't the primary explanation for why to put the Chanukah candles by your doorstep, by the entrance to your house. Right? So now that we saw, I raised that question a bit, and you can see that the Mishnah Berurah doesn't feel comfortable saying it's because of Pirsumei Nisa. And as I said, if the main idea of Chanukah candles was Pirsumei Nisa, the shul should be good enough. Times Square should be the best place to light your Chanukah candles. But we don't find that halachic reasoning. And it doesn't seem like that's really the main focus when we're talking about the location of the Chanukah candles. Clear till here? Anyone questions? Comments? Okay? So I think the question is clear. So why do we have this importance of putting it at the entrance? So I wanna try and give a bit of a few points of view. Let's start with Maimonides. This is source number. Sorry, I played around with the sources. It's good for jumping from place to place. It's source number 16. And Maimonides, the Rambam says that in the era of the Second Temple, the Greek kingdom issued decrees against the Jewish people, attempting to nullify their faith and refusing to allow them to observe the Torah and its commandments. They extended their hands against their property and their daughters. They entered the sanctuary, wrought havoc within, and made the sacraments impure. So that's generally the way that Maimonides describes what was going on. And something that's interesting is that sorry, I don't know how to pronounce this fancy English well enough. Can anyone help me with it? Wrought havoc within? But what does that mean, basically? Making holes in the wall. Which wall? A very certain wall, okay? So the source for that is in a Mishnah in Masechet Midot that basically says, this is in source number 8. It's not, you don't need to open there, it's only in Hebrew. I'm just saying, it says there that there was a small wall surrounding the Mikdash, on Temple Mount, on Har HaBayit, and this wall was only 10 tefachim high, meaning you can really skip it over if you want to, but the Greeks made 13 holes in those walls, in that wall. And the Mishnah goes on and says that later on, when we took control again over Temple Mount, we fixed those holes. And in correlation to that, the sages said that we need to have 13 bowing downs when we enter, parallel to those 13 holes. When you enter, when coming into the Beit Mikdash, you have to bow down 13 times. So that's a very interesting thing to think about. What happens here when you have the Greeks trying to make holes in our wall, and as a response to that, we fix it up, and we say we're not only fixing it up, we're also having something in memory of that and bowing down to Hashem, specifically in memory of those 13 holes. So it seems pretty symbolic. This wall is called the Sorag. Anyone familiar with the Sorag? So there are actually Greek writings, and there's a lot of historical evidence to this. Yosef ben Matityahu, what's his name in English? I forgot. Anyone remember? Matityahu. That's my name too. So Matityahu, in his historical book, he basically says that Titus, when he was fighting and he went and claimed against the Jews there, he said, we had a law that said that whoever passes your sorag, that wall, this is, again, it's later than the Greek era, it's already the Roman era, I'm just giving this as an example. He says, we had a law that we approved that any non-Jew that passes this wall would be sentenced to death. So we have evidence. You can question that evidence, but Titus himself is mentioned as someone who's saying there was this wall, and this wall was supposed to separate between the holy parts where people that aren't pure or aren't Jewish are not allowed to come in. So you can already try and start thinking, why was it important for the Greeks to make holes in these walls? We also have in Turkey and in the archaeological wing in Jerusalem. I forgot what. I think it's in the Israel Museum. I'm pretty sure. We have found, I think in the late 18th century, we've found writings, big stone writings, carved in stone in Greek, signs that say that whoever is not pure or not Jewish cannot enter here, in Greek. Okay, so that's the sorag. So that's just a bit of understanding what Maimonides is referring to. And it's interesting, like out of all the things, we have oppression, a cruel nation controlling our lives, stealing from us, torturing the daughters, and so on, as he described it, and made holes in the wall. Okay, so it seems very interesting, but it's something, I guess, more symbolic than what we would expect. So that's one example. And the second thing that you can see in a few of the sources here, so Maimonides, as mentioned, you could see it also, again, if you look at, at source 16, you see also there's a reference to Rashi in a bit of smaller font that states that before a Jewish virgin was married, she was required to have relations with the Greek officer. And so that's just another example of like the atrocities that were done by the Greeks. And part of what Maimonides is emphasizing is basically how they were barging in to our national holy home and to each and every private home. Okay, and the reaction that we have as Jews is very interesting. What do we do on Chanukah? We don't close up the door and light a light inside. What do? We actually light up the threshold. We light up the door. We light up what connects us to the external world, actually, in a sense. And that already brings up like a lot of questions. What exactly are we trying to symbolize here? What exactly is this idea? Okay, so as I said, the idea is definitely not only to light out. If it was only about the outside, we could have had better solutions. And as I said, like you can see in the Mishnah Brura, that it's not very clear to him how important it is to actually light outside, and does it really weigh more than other halachic values that we have in terms of lighting the Chanukah candle. So let's try to think for a second. Any thoughts? I'd love to hear. I've thought about this a lot, but I'd love to hear thoughts. Like, what, now that we see there is a balance between the inside and the outside, what do you think? How do you look at this? We'll throw in some more sources if you don't have ideas, but please, anyone. Okay, yes, please.
About, if we light it in such a way that other people can see, we're showing that we're not afraid to do it. That, you know, that if you were in a time of persecution, you might be pretty worried about putting it outside. And I think that's what happened in the old time, because you actually lighting doors, we closed doors so no one could see it. So I think you publicised, you've got the opportunity to carry out this mitzvah, and you can be proud of doing it and show the world you're actually doing it, so having to hide it.
Nice, thank you. So you're basically saying that a lot of it is really connecting it to the home, in the sense that to show that we are free to express ourselves outwards. But really, a lot of the emphasizing here is about expressing outwards. Okay, great, thank you. So I want to show a bit more of what the discussion is about when we talk about lighting the candles. So the first description, I think, in maybe one of the most famous ones for the Chanukah lights is, sorry, the statement in the Gemara, source number 3. The sages taught the mitzvah of Chanukah, a light for a person, a light per person, right? And their household. Mitzvat ner Chanukah, mitzvat Chanukah ner ishu veito. A person and their home, a person and their household, however you translate beito. Ve'amehadrin ner lekol echad ve'echad. And the ones that are mehadlin, that are even more excited or more willing to go for and do even more for their mitzvah, what do? A candle for each and every one of the people in the household. Okay? So that's the first time we meet the Chanukah candle. And what do we emphasize? The home. Okay, so it's very interesting to see that the home is really emphasized when we're talking about Ner Chanukah. The idea is to have every home has a light. That's the idea. If you want to go even more and do even extra, you have a light for each and every individual in the home. But really, the home as a light, that's first of all what we do. Okay. Next step, I would say, in source number 18. Rav Sheshet said, a guest is obligated in lighting the Hanukkah light. And Rabbi Zera said, at first, when I was studying in the yeshiva, I would participate in prutot, meaning copper coins, like give a few coins so I can be part of the lighting at the place where I was staying in yeshiva, the dorms, together with the host, right? After I married my wife, I said, now I certainly need not to do so because they light on my behalf in my house. So basically, Rabbi Zera is saying, as long as I didn't have a home of my own, wherever I was lighting a candle. But the moment I have my personal home, and now the word home already has a bit of a slightly different meaning, right? What does it mean here? It means I have a relationship, I have a connection, I have a family, so I don't need to participate anymore with other homes. Meaning the home is something crucial that defines where I belong, and according to that, where do I light? Okay? Another discussion that I didn't bring here, but just in shortly, there's a very famous discussion. What happens if you need to light a Chanukah candle and you need to make to light a Shabbat candle? What comes first? The Shabbat candle. But what does the Gemara say? What? Hanukkah comes first? No. What? No. Sorry. If you have only the money to do only one of them. Sorry. Yeah. Definitely. Right. So the law is Shabbat. And the way that the Gemara says, what's more important? Ner Beito or Ner Chanukah? What did the Gemara do? It didn't say Ner Shabbat. What did it say? Ner Beito. So that's a third, and there are a few more meanings of the word home when we're discussing Chanukah in that same sugya. And basically the Gemara doesn't say the Shabbat candle. What is it saying? It's your home candle. It's your inside light. It comes first before the outside light. But it's purposely not saying the word Shabbat candle. What is it saying? The home candle. So I'm just saying all this, I think, ties in together to emphasize that, first of all, the idea of the Chanukah candles is really to link to the home, to have that understanding of the Jewish home and the light that it has, and to spread it a bit outwards, okay? And that relates to a bit of what we started discussing and one of the thoughts that came up here. So I want to maybe take it now another step. When you think about I'm not saying this exactly as historical facts, okay? But when you think about the Greek world and the way that Chazal were looking at the Greek world and the way that they were trying to deal with it, I think you can uncover a few additional levels of meaning. Our sages were looking at the Greek world, and they felt this battle that wasn't only a political battle or a battle for land. It was really a battle between cultures. And when the Greeks break and make holes in the walls that surround our sanctuary, our holy space, what are they trying to do? Are they just trying to humiliate us, or are they trying to make a point? Okay? When we think about the Greek world, we understand that they really had a different ideology. And part of what they were fighting was the Jewish perception of holiness, the way that we looked at family, the way that we looked at the human body. There was a lot about nakedness, praising the body in the Greek culture. There was a lot of things about uncovering things and not creating holy spaces, not creating border lines. And I think that's, again, a lot of what Chazal, when they were trying to think about, what are we trying to say? What is our statement in the world? I think that's a lot of what the Chanukah was trying to express. Chazal didn't want to close us up. They really wanted the house to be lightened up, and they wanted a connection with the external world. They wanted the threshold, they wanted the doorway to be lightened up. To say, in a sense, we're not throwing out the external world. We are building a holy inner space, but it is super important for us to also express it outwards, to light it outwards, and maybe even, in some commentaries, it's to invite people inwards. We're not putting up new walls and that's it. We're putting up lights and understanding that the connection between the external world and the internal world is a lot of what we're trying to do. So that I think that's like a first step, and maybe I think it ties into a few more things. The next halakha I want to look into, and then we'll try tying it together. So I've mentioned already that you're supposed to light it's in the first source, second paragraph, one should place the Chanukah light above 3 tefachim. It is a mitzvah to place it beneath 10 tefachim. So on top of 3 tefachim, that's basically, right, this much above the ground, right, something like that. But it also isn't supposed to be too high up. Okay, so it's some halachic authorities didn't think this is important or a thing of significance, but really this is our halacha. So in that sense, if you think about it, this is a space that is right between, basically where the Chanukah lights are supposed to be, is the place that connects the ground and our higher levels of ourselves, right? Basically, it's the center of a person. So I want to think about that also in terms of having some lighting up an area that connects the higher levels of our existence and the lower levels of our existence. In a few places in Shas, mainly in Masechet Sukkah, again, I didn't bring it. It's a lot of, it's too many sources. It came out 4 pages already. But there's a discussion about why the sukkah needs to be above 10 tfachim. And basically, the Gemara says that the Shekhinah never went down below 10 tfachim. The idea is that really, we can separate our existence to our higher levels of existence and the lower levels of existence. And what the Gemara is, and what I think comes out here, is another example that we light the Chanukah candles not high to say, oh, we have like this great light, and we're not putting it on the ground either. We're putting it in the place that's the liminal space, the place that connects the higher existence and the lower existence. Okay, that's another example. So we already see that the Chanukah candle needs to be between the inside and the outside. It needs to be between the higher levels and the lower levels of our personality or our body, but it really represents, I think, beyond that. What else? When do we light the candles? So in source number 2, we do. The English is on the other side. Chanukah candles are not lit before sunset, but rather with the end of sunset, neither later or before. Okay, and if one did not light with sunset, either due to forgetfulness or on purpose, they should go ahead and light until people stop passing through the marketplace. Okay, so basically, again, when do we light Hanukkah candles? Between day and night, okay? If we really wanted people to see the candles, or to publicize the miracle, what could have we done? Either put up flags in the middle of the day and people will see them, or turn on lights when it's really dark, right? So you could push back on me and say, no, obviously people are walking back home, so that's the best time to catch their attention, okay? But it's not really fully dark. It's not fully day. It's right in the twilight. It's right in between. And in a sense, we're lighting those candles, connecting the light of the day into the night, right? But in a sense, it's also that liminal space, the time of transition. And we're lighting up the candles also at that period of time where we're connecting day and night. Another thing something to think about is, when in the calendar do we have Hanukkah? Connecting between the long and short days, right? The days are becoming shorter and shorter and shorter. You know, there's a famous story of Adam Arishon. Adam, after he sinned, he saw that the days are becoming shorter. He became scared. He thought the world is going to become dark, and that's it. And then he saw that the days are starting to become longer again. This is the Gemara in Masechet Avodah Zarah. But basically, Hanukkah is placed, located in the calendar at the time that connects between the days becoming shorter and when the days are starting to become longer. So also in that sense, it's like right in the middle. Hanukkah is right in the middle of, and it represents a lot of things that are right in the middle, connecting between two different worlds of existence. And in that sense, we can if we build it up a bit more. We'll get back to that in a second. Okay, I'll try to develop it a bit more in a second. So as I said, I want to try and start wrapping things and connecting things together. The Greek world that Chazal were dealing with was a world that really glorified the body, glorified the external existence. It glorified not having those barriers. And the Jewish reaction to that was really to take the ability of closing things up, to understanding that there's a light within the Jewish home. And as I said, if we look at the halachot, it's to emphasize, first of all, that each and every home has its holiness, right? And when you think about the decrees that they had, in which they would kidnap women who were about to get married, or that they wanted to stop circumcision. They wanted to. There's also one of the sources that I brought here that they had a decree not to have children. All of this reminds us, in a lot of ways, of the first decrees against the Jewish people, right? In Mitzrayim, right? In a sense, what did Pharaoh do? Pharaoh said, "Throw the boys in the river." What happens to the girls, right? For Pharaoh, it was very important to be able to control the Jewish people and to control the Jewish homes. And the first mitzvah that we get as Jewish people is to do the Korban Pesach. How do we do the Korban Pesach? We put the blood on the doorposts, right? Again, so in the sense, there's something very similar. And how do we eat the Korban Pesach? As a family. No individual can eat the Korban Pesach by themselves. So in that sense, I'm not saying it's exactly the same thing, but there is something very similar about emphasizing the Jewish home, understanding the holiness of the home, understanding the light that each and every home has and each and every individual has, and that we need to do this together. Just like Korban Pesach, you need to do the Korban together. You can't do Korban Pesach by yourself. It's against the law of Korban Pesach, and you need to eat it together with the people who were sharing with you the intention and paid for it or whatever it is, but to really create a group of a family or families together and lighting. And sorry, not lighting, but it would also be true for lighting. So in that sense, there's something about the last holiday in Jewish history, in a sense, and the first holiday, that we have that obligation of doing something that symbolizes, that emphasizes the door, and at the same time emphasizing the home, the internal. And the second thing that I mentioned was connecting the different levels of existence. In many ways, the Greek philosophy brought into the world the separation between the spiritual and the material. Right? That's one of the. I think I don't want to. Banit Navid's husband. I've learned from him medieval philosophy in the past. I don't know if I'm saying something not accurate enough, but okay, yeah. But really, that separation, I don't think was something that was emphasized in Jewish sources back then. You can find it later on, like maybe Greek influence or whatever. You can talk about it, but really, you can see that the Jewish idea of taking the material and using it as part of your spiritual world was always the practice, and it was always what was going on. And in the Greek world, it was much more of that separation, and in a sense, giving up the spiritual world. And in that sense, as I've mentioned, the connection between the different levels of our existence, I think, is symbolized by where the Chanukah candles are located. The third thing, as I mentioned, the connection between night and day. So, in that sense, if we look at the entrance, we look at all those connecting points, we look at the threshold, we can think about the entrance in many ways. Is the entrance a place that closes us off from the external world, or is it a place that opens up? Is it a place where we put barriers, or is it a place where we're actually trying to expose something, or we're trying to discover something? Is it a place where we try to escape from the external world, or is it a place where we actually try to go out to the external world? And the answer is that all the above, right? And I think that's part of what is beautiful about the Chanukah candles, that they really give us that opportunity. They give us that opportunity to examine our relationship with the external world, to examine our relationship with Greek philosophy, to examine what comes in, what goes out. How do we create a holy space, and at the same time we can bring things in, we can invite things in, and on the other hand we can go out. But the most important thing is really illuminating the threshold, to illuminate that liminal space, the transition between the two. And in that sense, the war that we had was against cruelty, but at the same time, our reaction wasn't to just close ourselves up and say, we don't want to deal with the world anymore. We actually said, we want to put the light up right at the threshold, and to be able to invite ourselves to go out, to invite things to come in. Where is the first interaction that we have with the Greeks, or with the Greek culture? So it's something interesting to think about. If you look at source number 14, so it's in the book of Bereshit, right? Genesis, as some might say. So after Noah comes out of the ark, he gets drunk, he falls asleep, his son Ham does something inappropriate to him, and when he realizes, he curses Ham, and then he blesses Shem and Yefet. What happened in that story? I'm assuming most of you are familiar, right? So Shem, which is the first Semite, right, our great ancestor, it's important for him to have dignity, his father's dignity, and he covers him up. But together with Yefet, he invites Yefet to do that with him. And in that sense, Noah blesses Yefet, and he blesses Shem. He blesses Shem first, and he says, Yaft Elokim leYefet v'ishkon be'olei Shem. So there was no good translation to Yaft, but at least the way I brought it here in English, may Hashem, may God, Yaft to Yefet. So Yaft could mean increase or to bless. It comes from the word Yafeh, from beauty, that Hashem shall do good things to Yefet. But then he doesn't conclude the blessing with that. What does he say? V'ishkon be'olei Shem, meaning, and let him dwell in the tents of Shem. What does that mean? It means that we're not giving, and not only that we're not giving up on Yefet, Yefet, that is the great ancestor of the Greek culture, is actually supposed to come and dwell in the tents of Shem. There's an invitation here, thousands of years earlier, for this culture not to be excluded, but to come in, not to break down the walls, not to make holes in the walls, to acknowledge what's inside the Jewish tent, right? And the tent isn't just it's something that describes Avram. It's something that describes Yaakov. It's something that describes our ancestors, and also in the desert for decades, for a long time, the Jewish people were in tents. It was something that was important for Hashem that we have that experience. That's a different topic, but really it's something that describes Yaakov Avinu, who we are named after, right? Ish tam yoshev ohalim. Yaakov Avinu is a person who dwells in a tent. And in that sense, the first time we interact with this culture, with the Greek culture in a sense, or in its ancestry, we see this blessing that says that the Greek culture is supposed to come and be part of it, right? There's always a question, I don't know, at least I'm familiar from soccer now that there's the World Cup, right? So it's very important. I hope everyone lights their candles and doesn't watch the World Cup. But there's always a question: where's the home court, right? It gives you it gives you a good head start, a good starting point if you're having the game in your place, right? Where are you going to have the business meeting? I think it's a tip they give business people. I don't know. I don't deal with business. But are you inviting them to come to your office? You're going to their office? You're a neutral space? The space sets the rules. And in that sense, when the Greeks first came here, it was important for them that it won't be our home space. Their ideology, their philosophy, their worldview, and to really, there was a desecration of everything that was important to us. But Chanukah wasn't only about giving up on everything that the Greeks had. It was winning and then saying, now that we won, we also want to take and appreciate everything that we can from this culture. And in that sense, Chanukah, I think it represents not only the ability to emphasize the things that are holy to us and to have that Jewish home. And as I said, the Shabbat candle, the home candle, comes first. But then the second level is that the Chanukah candle needs to be in that space between us and the external world. It's not about shining out towards them. It's not only saying to the world, we won, and it's not only about publicizing the miracle, because that's not the point. By the way, Pilsum Nisa, I'll just say this shortly. There's only one more place later on in the Gemara that says what Pilsum Nisa is. That's source 17. And they ask, should we say, I'm not reading it in, but you can see it in there. There's a dilemma. Should you say Al Anisim, mention the miracle during Birkat Hamazon? Okay? And the answer is you don't need to, but if you do, so you do it there. But what is the reasoning? Why should you and should you not mention Al Anisim in Birkat Hamazon? Since it's a mitzvah from the Rabbanan, it's not a mitzvah from the Torah, it's only from the sages, maybe you don't need to mention it in Birkat Hamazon. Or maybe you should. Why? The Gemara says, because Pilsumei Nisa. Okay, so Pilsumei Nisa, at least in the way that I understand from the Gemara, it's not about putting banners, putting up big signs, flags everywhere, making a point in the public domain. Pilsumei Nisa is even when you're benching. It's reminding yourself of the miracle. But the way we do it is shining outwards. So I think really all these things come and tied together to express that the idea of Chanukah, again, is having that smaller, intimate, holy space, each and every Jewish home, as a light, as a place that, and each and every individual for the Mehadrin. And since our custom is even more than that, that the light grows every day, one more and one more. But it's really that personal, intimate Jewish home. And that's what won. But on the other hand, we're lighting up the doorstep, the threshold, the place that connects us to the external world. And the title of this shir was Illuminating the Liminal. So I don't know if, I assume there are at least some here that know psychology better than me, and the idea of the liminal space, or the liminal, the liminal became like a phrase. It was coined as an idea of transition. When you're in a space between two worlds, right? Between two worlds, you're not really here, you're not really there. Right? You're not really fully inside, you're not really fully outside, and that space is a space for itself. The doorpost, the door is not inside and it's not outside. Okay? And in that sense, it's that place that connects. It's the ability to really be in both places and also not be in both places. And in that sense, when we step outside to light the Chanukah candles, we're connecting the worlds. We're not connecting it without thinking about it. We're connecting it up with light and understanding that the connection could be the most important thing. How to bring things in, how to go outside. We have a few more minutes, so we'll see the last source. Sorry, it's in the fourth page. It's a right? It's all the way at the end. It's a short passage from the Zohar, which brings a very interesting spiritual interpretation to another thing that we did not discuss, which is the candle itself. And the Zohar says, I'll read in English, come and see. One who desires to know the wisdom of the holy unity should gaze upon, some of you mentioned this already, that it's important to gaze upon the candle itself. If you want to know the wisdom of holy unity, you should gaze upon a flame that rises from a coal or from a lit candle. For the flame only rises when, sorry, I connected the words, rises when it is attached to a coarse object or to a different object. So the Zohar here is looking at the candle. When you look at a candle, what do you see? And the Zohar is saying you can see the wisdom of holy unity. When we look at a candle, like why didn't we put out flags? We could have put out flags. We could have coined victory coins, or put up what's it called? The big gates that they used to put up when you win a war. All the emperors, right? They put up giant gates, giant monuments. That wasn't the purpose. The idea was that each and every home lights up a light. What does a light represent? So according to the Zohar, the light, the candle, demonstrates unity, not separation. What we usually would think is when you take a match, you light something up, you're burning it. You're demolishing it. But it's saying no. It's a transformative, it's something that demonstrates unity, actually. The unity between the energy and the physical and the spiritual, right? You have a few different levels. When you look at a candle, you see something coarse. You see something without life, just a coal, a candle. It doesn't have life. But then you have fire on it. The fire consumes and translates that dead thing into energy. It actually is representing unity between the physical and the spiritual. Okay? And if we take it to the big debate between the Greek world and the Jewish world, it demonstrates how you take the material world and turn it into light. You turn it into energy, into positive energy, into something that glows. Okay? And in that sense, when we're thinking about it, maybe Chanukah is all about connecting the different existence within our world. The days getting short and the days getting long, the darkness and the light, the day and night, the higher levels of who we are and the lower levels of who we are, our external world and our internal world, our Jewish world, and maybe we also have other worlds that are part of our life. And in that sense, Chanukah is an invitation to light up those places, to examine the relationship between the two, not to necessarily give up, but understanding there's an inside and there's an outside. What are your priorities? How do you connect those two worlds in a way that they actually translate our physical and material aspects in a way that they can become spiritual, in a way that they can light up, in a way that they can really become part of our spiritual aspirations and what we really desire, and without being sucked out of our homes and sucked out of who we are, and finding those balances. So in that sense, again, I think what Chanukah is inviting us to do is to specifically light up the doorsteps, the threshold, the liminal spaces, those places of transitions where we go in and out. Because that's really what our life is about. Our life isn't about only being in the tent or only being outside. And I think again, this is a very specific, small spiritual notion. But I think it's very, very, it was very intentional when Chazal did this. And in that sense, the whole idea of Chanukah, I think, is lighting up those borderlines and illuminating the liminal. Tov. So Chanukah Sameach. I'd love to any comments, any thoughts. I'm